Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to our breakout session 2 on marginalized people, groups, and communities. I'd like to invite everyone actually just to turn your videos on. Please keep your mics muted, but you can turn the video on so we can actually have kind of an organic conversation. We can see each other, see each other as best we can and try and interact and be good audience members for our presenters in the presentation videos. And so what we're going to do today is, first of all, thank you all for joining. We have our presenters here. We also have some audience members. And again, I want to thank you for joining for the breakout sessions. And what we're going to do today is try and mimic a typical sort of professional conference environment. It's a good sort of professional development experience for our students and for our audience members as well. And so here's what we're going to try and do today. We're going to try and split up, well, not try, we're going to split up the presentations into 3 and 3. So in other words, we will view 3 of our student video presentations. We will break for a 15-minute Q&A, and then we'll see our second 3 presentations, and then we'll break for a final Q&A before we rejoin the final session with the rest of the crews from the other breakout sessions. So if you wouldn't mind, it'd be really great if while we watch the first 3 videos, you jot down any comments, questions, anything at all that you'd like to pose to our student presenters or to your moderator, and then we'll have a really lively conversation in between. I already see some of my students in the room, so hopefully they'll help out in making sure that we have a good, productive conversation in between and after these presentations. So without further ado, what I would like to do now is sort of run through our presentations, our first 3, and then I'll have our assistant, our wonderful director, Christine, for our breakout session. We'll go ahead and start our videos. So first of all, we'll get things started with our first student presentation on anti-Asian hate during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is coming from Anthony Girardi. Our second presentation will be on collegiate sport and its potential to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in rural communities. And this will come from Jesse Blair. And then third, our final video for the first half will be youth sports during COVID-19 from Evelyn Meza. And with that, let's go ahead and start our videos. And again, I ask that everyone jot down your notes, jot down your questions, and we will go from there. Okay, thank you so much again to all of our presenters. I think you can see we have some really wonderful presentations to review today. We'll have 3 more to follow. But before we do that, why don't we open it up for some Q&A for our presenters who are here. Go ahead and raise your hand, if you will, for your question or comment, and then we'll address it to the presenter and highlight you to speak. While we are waiting, I will ask the first question, as usually has to happen. I'll encourage students and others to jump in with their own here in a moment. So my first question is actually for Anthony. So first of all, great presentation, man. I really enjoyed it. I think you did an excellent job, as I said in the chat. I'm wondering, and this is something that we've been talking about in our classes for students that are here, what potential do you see for cross-racial solidarity? So between Asian American and Latinx or African American folks, when it comes to public health issues, including and beyond COVID. So in other words, what sort of potential for solidarity building do you see in the sort of terrain of public health, healthcare, COVID, as one of the potential solutions to the problems that you're addressing?
Thank you for the question. I think when it comes to the issues that Asian Americans face, it's something that's indicative of a much bigger thing. Problems that minorities face is something that not just Asians face, it's just all minorities in America. And I think that's something that I tried to hit on with the model minority myth, that a lot of times Asian Americans are pitted against other minorities. And so it's one thing that I like to highlight and something that I would like for us to distance ourselves from. Because I think, like you are asking, having these minority groups come together in solidarity is something that, we don't have to tackle these problems alone. It's something that we could do together.
Thank you, Anthony. And again, I want to just sort of reiterate to everyone that this is very chill right now, right? So we can be chill. You don't have to be too nervous. Like, students in terms of asking questions, y'all in terms of answering them, right? We're literally just getting together to celebrate the work of students doing this really important research. And we want to give y'all some practice in a conference environment with one another, right? But that doesn't mean I'm just sitting here blowing smoke up your rear, right? Like, I really mean everything I'm saying. But I just want to take, just take some of the nervousness out of the room, you know what I mean? And I see already some hands going up for questions. So everyone just chill, fam. This is normal talk for us, y'all. It's recorded, but we're not going to do anything too crazy, right? So thank you. Neva, thank you so much for jumping in with a question. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you all for your presentations. I think you mentioned one person can't be here. So I was watching all of your presentations and trying to take notes as much as possible. This is a bit of a larger, broader question, but I'm curious if you see what the future is going to look like as these identity groups, the lines between them become more and more blurred in, for example, the United States. Living here in San Jose, we have different groups of people who, at this point, like a lot of my family are not just Latinx or Asian, they're both. They're not just Black or Asian, they're both, how do you think that sort of, trying to figure out how to exactly phrase my question, but how do you think that's going to shift things? How do you think that's going to change things, as we find it harder and harder to kind of categorize people into specific groups?
It sounds like this is addressed to Anthony, but it also seems like Jesse has some responses as well. I see him nodding, so I'll invite either of them to jump in with some responses.
I can go first. So this is coincidentally also part of a research paper I just finished. One question is we need to suspend our beliefs about these particular groups. And what I mean by suspension, with rural communities specifically, there's this belief either they're culturally backwards or that they're this heartland of America and moral values. The problem with those beliefs, or any kind of putting somebody into a box, is that limits and corners them into a specific way of growing into the future. So if we're able to suspend those to allow these groups to be free to develop and adapt as they deem fit, they're not only going to be able to grow and thrive into the modern world, but they're also able to express themselves and embrace their differences because they're saying, this is how we're different, rather than someone else saying you're different because you're different from this perspective.
Do you want to jump in with any of this, Anthony, or anyone else from? I know we have some other group presenters from Nasmeen's group in the room. So if any of you want to jump in as well, raise your hand and we'll let you in. Anthony, do you have a response at all?
I don't have a particular.
Cool. Thank you, Nava. Excellent question. Any other questions from our audience for our presenters? Okay, I see some claps. Let me look for a hand here. Oh, we have hands. All right. Why don't we start with Julia and then we'll go with Yesenia.
Hey, my name is Julia. I actually work for San Jose State as a writer in the Strategic Communications Office, and I've had the chance to meet Bill a couple times and learn about the Human Rights Institute. So hi, I'm kind of peeking in because I'm doing some reporting about COVID, and I was really excited to see some of the topics in your research. So one question I have for you guys, I was really impressed with all your work, by the way. I recently interviewed a philosophy professor about this concept of immunoprivilege and vaccine passports. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the best way to accurately report on what this is. So I'd be really interested to hear from you, as well as anyone else in this class who may be studying these topics. Like, what do you think, like, to what extent does like privilege play into vaccine distribution, things like that? And thank you.
I'll invite our presenters to jump in. Anthony or Jesse, would you like to jump in? I have a response as well.
So there's actually a particular article that I think you're going to enjoy. If you're familiar with the Baltimore Ravens, they're an NFL team in Baltimore, Maryland, and one of their former players, Anquan Boldin, actually addressed what I'm understanding to be this exact issue. Because down in Florida, apparently how the governor is distributing vaccines is through Publix. I'm not familiar if you have any of those stores in California, but when I was actually working down in Florida for about 7 months in the central area, that's pretty much like Walmart. That's Target. That's the place everybody goes to. Here's the problem. They're not in rural communities. So Anquan Boldin, recognizing this issue because his hometown, I cannot pronounce it, and I don't remember the name, but his hometown is 30 miles away. And if you got a job, if you got responsibilities at home, that's a trek. So he went to his hometown and set up a vaccination distribution center to bring those immunizations to his hometown where they necessarily wouldn't have that opportunity. So that's one specific example.
I'll jump in as well if no one else wants to jump in yet. So from a sort of international legal perspective and a human rights perspective, Julie, these are pretty serious issues, as you can imagine. I don't want to take up too much time, but I would just say that on the front end, the issue of the inequality, in other words, the unequal access to vaccines across the world, is hugely problematic. And it's problematic for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is because it's simply not true, either in this case or ever, by the way, when pharmaceutical companies lie through their teeth and say that somehow they are incurring all the cost of research that goes into vaccines and medicines. That is abundantly untrue. Right, that is actually a great deal of taxpayer money, not just from the United States, but other countries as well, contributed to all of the vaccine models that are available now through the public sector. So that is a huge issue in terms of propriety. And it should not be a shock to anyone in this room who's ever been with me for me to say that this is largely an issue of capital, right? This is largely an issue of attempting to privatize and draw profit from the new dependence on vaccines that is now being created. What many people are just now coming around to as well is these are not permanent vaccines. These are conditions under COVID virus where it's very likely that folks, to remain safe, if you will have to get repeat doses of these vaccines from these companies. You can imagine what that means to the companies in terms of a long-term profit chain, right? And so it is an international market that these companies are attempting to protect. But as has been mentioned by our presenters, that protection flies directly in the face of the actual medical science, which suggests that even in the most self-serving ways, in the sense that none of us wants to get sick and fall ill, as the student said, we actually need full global vaccination to reach, significant herd immunity to where those dangers are behind us in some sort of controllable way. So that's the kind of the front end issue. The back end issue of the vaccine passports, the United Nations and other international bodies have been very clear about standing against that. And the reason is because of everything I just said, right? Because it's an impossibly unfair terrain. And you can imagine what that then creates when you have like the wealthy nations that are vaccinating all their people and they can go wherever they want to do what they want, these sorts of things. And then it'll be the world's poor and dispossessed and in rural communities and in other, third world communities and elsewhere that, right, that's going to be an issue. So I apologize for taking time. I really wanted to respect your question. You said that it's a great one. But with that, let me go to our next question. Yesenia, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, so my question's for Anthony, and I really liked everybody's presentations. I think they all have a very important role that we should learn about. In your presentation, you do mention like accountability in government and politics. So I just kind of wanted to see if you could give an example of, you know, how would we actually hold these people accountable?
Hi, Yesenia. Thank you for your question. I think one really big example that I've seen where people want to hold government officials accountable is when Donald Trump was asked to denounce white supremacy. I can't exactly remember when this was. I think this is when he was running for re-election. But it's something that a lot of people noted that he didn't outright denounce. He didn't say, you know, this is wrong. And I think it's important to, you know, try and nail that home with, you know, your local officials, or, you know, reaching out to maybe say your university president and, you know, having them send out a newsletter and talk about that. That's one thing that San Jose State does a really great job of. But, you know, that's something that we could take and apply that elsewhere as well.
Great. Thank you, Yesenia, for that excellent question. And thank you, everyone, for these thoughtful questions. I think it's time for us to move on to our second group of videos. And so why don't we show a little love for our presenters that have been so bravely answering your questions today. Yeah, excellent job, y'all. Excellent job. Thank you so much. And again, Jesse, welcome from Michigan, fam. I'm originally from Ohio, so you got mad Midwesterners in here. Don't trip. So at any rate, why don't we go ahead and I'll let our section director go ahead and start our next set of videos. Okay, this was another excellent round of presentations. I want to first of all thank everyone for you know, putting all this work into your videos, into your research, into the presentations for all of us. It really makes this really enjoyable. And in fact, y'all, I kind of wish that our professional presentations went like this, because when we're in these videos, then all the old professor types don't drone on and on and on and on. So this is way more fun to be in here with some younger folks that are a little more to the point, and we have kind of a different scene going on. So hopefully everyone appreciates that efficiency and our ability to appreciate everyone's work. So I want to go ahead and invite our presenters kind of onto the floor, if you will. I want to invite folks to ask questions of our presenters. And a couple things I want to say just very quickly is that let's remember that again, we have groups here in many cases. So though the questions might be addressed at one or other presenter, I want to remember that it's groups of students that put all this work into these presentations, is these research projects, and we want to, you know, show respect and love to the whole group, right? So really excellent job to folks who put in work on these. And so let's go to our questions, and shut me up for a minute. Nava, I saw your hand up first, and then I think we have another question from Yesenia.
Hi, sorry for talking all the time. I guess I'll try to keep mine really to the point. My apologies, I don't remember which group was the one that presented this, but it was during the presentation where it was talking about how AI and algorithms are determining everything from human interactions, dating, stuff like that, to policing. One of the conclusions to that presentation was advocating for the hiring of people of color in the workplaces of the people that design a lot of these algorithms. And I guess my question was if you felt that that was sufficient to fully combat the issues that were being presented by having algorithms dominate everything, especially policing, because I mean, well, I'll leave it at that.
I think it's a matter of that's not the only means of finding a solution. I think inclusiveness is a solution to this like big problem. We only were able to write on one because the teacher said to cut it, our professor had to cut it a bit short on solution wise. But having inclusiveness and having people of color partake in like these types and like partake in creating the algorithms that work for policing is effective, because they're going to become more aware of the disparities that do come about because of these algorithms. I think that's just one of these solutions out of the many that could happen, you know.
Thank you very much for the thoughtful question and response. Yesenia, would you like to jump in with your question?
Yes, so I think my question is for Evelyn. In your call to action, you mentioned after school programs. So I was just wondering if you could kind of expand on like what would these programs entail? Would they be more like academically focused or like sports or both?
Hi, thank you. So the main thing when I was doing my research where was that researchers found that after school programs can be beneficial for kids who don't necessarily want to like try out for the soccer team or whatnot. So they can sign up for after school programs. And the main thing is to ensure that these programs are educating the kids on how they can be physically active, like just kind of encouraging healthy lifestyles, nutrition, all of that without like it's more so for kids who don't necessarily want to join a sports team. Like after school programs still provide them access to the information they need to like live healthier lifestyles.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Jesse has our next question. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hello, again, great job to all of you. For the AI group, I'm curious, you mentioned how the AI can influence elections. Did you find any information on how has it influenced attitudes towards COVID-19 and or any of the vaccines?
We specifically didn't focus on COVID-19. We were told to focus on just like topics of our own, general topics of AI throughout just everyday life. We weren't told to specifically focus on COVID. Otherwise, we would have definitely done research on that realm, but just more of a main focus on just what we did a criminal justice focus, we did a focus on our social life, and we did a focus on the economic realm as well. Not necessarily the vaccine and COVID, but yeah.
Thank you. And I don't see any other questions yet, but I have a couple myself. I got to do my duty as a moderator and ask some questions as well. So Samanpreet, you were just answering questions, so I'll keep you on, but I want to invite your other group members to answer as well. So if anyone else from Samanpreet's group would like to jump in, you're more than welcome to do so. Or if more than one of you wants to answer this question, you're more than welcome to do so. So I'm gonna pose kind of a difficult sort of Soc Theory 101 question for you all about the sort of broader ramifications of these technologies for specifically your generation, right? So my question is this: how have these technologies, and you can think of that however you like, this sort of new gen of technologies that cover surveillance and consumption and all these, and that's the algorithmic technologies, the AI technologies, and all of these this sort of same suit, right? How have all these new technologies affected your political power as a generation? And you can take that question however you like.
Okay, so I can
Go ahead.
So one way that I've noticed in my research how algorithms and artificial intelligence has influenced us politically has been within like social media, especially on fake news. As we saw in the 2016 election with Trump and Clinton, we also saw how Russia in some way was able to interfere with the election. You know, we saw a lot of news reports about that. But even other than that, we saw how a lot of fake news was going on within like the Trump election and the whole administration. And so this would influence like people on Facebook will look on, you know, this app just to find your basic information, your basic news, and they'll find like fake news. And of course, you don't know it's fake news because at that time, Facebook didn't flag it. You know, there was no option to like to test if it was like actually valuable information. So I think that's one way it has influence because we're so easily on social media all the time and we're eager to find anything that's easily accessible. So like we see something on Facebook and we just believe it, you know, and sometimes you don't have the time to go do your own research. So I think that's one way, but yeah.
Anyone else like to jump in on this question? So by the way, at this point, y'all, I have one or two more questions for our panelists, but we have a few minutes before we close. So what we like to do in these kinds of presentations is then allow for some just organic discussion at the end. So kind of free form. Anyone can jump in, anyone can comment, anyone can ask questions. I just want to make sure we can wrap up with a cool, engaging few minutes before we run off for our final session. So I'm going to ask one more question before I leave it up to the sort of organic conversation of the group, either on the question I just asked or whatever you like. So Hufsa, you haven't taken a question yet. I actually had a question about your research. So I know you said that this was not statistically significant. However, I thought it was really interesting how you said, and I'd heard some of this data before through some other articles, about how of all of the employment categories, it was actually medical employees largely who were showing some resistance to getting the vaccine. Oh, is Hufsa not with us? Oh, I'm sorry. So my apologies. Hufsa's not with us today, but I'll pose the question as well, right, for the recording or for the rest of the group. I don't know about the rest of you, but again, I found this to be a really fascinating aspect of her research. Why would we see among the different categories, particularly among the quote unquote essential worker categories, right? Why would we see the medical grouping so distrustful of the vaccine? So I just found that to be a really interesting finding of hers. So I'll just open it up now for any other questions for panelists, any other points of conversation that you wanted to draw out from the presentations, and we'll wrap after a few minutes of that.
I think for me, at least anecdotally, I've heard of a lot of people that have hesitancy to vaccinate just because of kind of like the rapid development and implementation of it. And so some people might be a little hesitant to vaccinate themselves just because they believe that there might not be enough research, enough testing that has occurred.
Yeah, I agree.
Go, Evelyn.
Sorry, Jesse. I was gonna say, just anecdotally, I totally agree with Anthony, because I got my second dose yesterday, and I'm not really worried about that, but I know a lot of even friends are kind of saying the same thing, like they're kind of gonna wait it out and then wait till more research comes out. So I've definitely heard something to that extent as well.
And exactly building off that, Evelyn, is like, I'm in Michigan, and by the way, go Ohio State. That might be heresy, but I'm saying that. But here we're pretty much leading the nation in pretty much every single county except for maybe one and maybe New York. And I think another part of this is I think there has been some fumbling in the promotion of COVID-19 and understand literature and CDC guidelines. And I think there's also kind of a fatigue, a quarantine fatigue going on of now we have to do something else again. It's been a year. When is this going to end?
Indeed, I want to draw Jesse. I think it's a really good point. It's same, Evelyn. I'm wondering if any of you picked up as well on it was part of Tasmin's research earlier in the day, where she noted that the trust in the president was very, very poor, which again, noting that the data was collected sort of in the university community, that shouldn't be terribly surprising given what we know about politics of that community. But what was a little more surprising to me, and I think links to the conversation right now, is that the trust in the news media, if you notice too, was atrociously low. And it's particularly in comparison to like one's own doctor, one's own sort of family, and these sorts of things. And so I wonder if you all see a connection between people's feelings about vaccination in general and these sorts of fears, and that either distrust of or increasingly sort of alienation from the news media. Is there a connection there, or am I just trying to draw something out of nothing?
I don't think you're necessarily drawing something out of nothing. I think that's part of the valid point, is somewhat like we have party polarization where we have kind of a lack of communication now between the political parties. I think we're seeing the same distrust in the news media of, okay, MSNBC is going to lean this way, Fox is going to lean that way. We have no idea what CNN's doing anymore. And I think that's kind of the attitude is, I think people are growing into more of, I'm going to trust the people I know I can trust. And if the news media is not involved in that, that means I'm going to watch it even less.
Okay, great. I want to leave it now open for any other questions or comments from the audience members, from our panelists, anything at all. One thing that I want to remind us is we do have a closing session. So what we'll do is we'll see if we have any other questions or comments from the group or the audience. And then we will just very temporarily exit from our breakout room, and then we'll be rejoining the main room again for our closing session. Please, please, please rejoin us for the closing session too, y'all. It's not going to be super long. I find it very, very slim chances that we'll be going till 5 o'clock. We'll be ending far sooner than that, I think. But it's really important, if we can, to join the final session, because we're actually going to be giving out our first annual faculty award for human rights and social change. And we're also going to be awarding one of the student or student groups from today with our first annual student award that we'll be giving out each year. And so we want to make sure that we pay respect to those award recipients and be here to give them a good round of applause and celebrate with them. And also we're going to share some really important information with some of you at the end that we hope you get to sort of take part in. And so again, before I open it up, I just have one more comment that I realized I forgot from my notes. So this is actually for Simranpreet's group on algorithms, AI, and new tech. So it just so happens that we, and by we, I mean the Human Rights Institute. So we're actually going to be hosting a fall series, and it's actually going to be part. So I may be kind of like letting too much out now, but so San Jose State's going to be starting under a wonderful staff member who's on the president's cabinet, Jamal Williams. Is going to be starting an annual sort of like big picture program in the fall on racial justice. And so as part of that big program, HRI is going to put together a series specifically on that new tech, race, racism, and structured inequality. And so it sounds like this group's work would be an excellent addition to that lineup. I don't know what your all plans are, if you're going to be around, not going to be around in the fall, what your plans are for that research, but I'll throw my email in the chat here in a moment before you all run off. And if anyone for that group, you'd be interested in that fall series, please do shoot me an email and I'll get you connected with our journalism coordinator, Halima Kazan-Stojanovic, who's actually taking the lead on organizing that series. Yo, thank you, Christine. Yeah, there's my email in the chat now. So go ahead and shoot me an email if you like, and we'd be happy to get you connected if that's something you'd be interested in. And with that, I'll open it up for any last questions or comments for me, for panelists, audience members. And if there's no questions, we'll make our exit.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate what you have to say. So nice to hear. Thank you.
Of course, fam. I really think your research is great. I'm really proud of you and your group. And if we have any way to help give you more platform and encouragement to continue that research, we want to do that. Right?
So much. Thank you.
So reach out if y'all are interested, okay?
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions all? All right, everyone, thank you so much. So fortunately, we've got a little bit of time to run to the restroom, get a drink of water, a little snack or something like that. Please do rejoin us in the main room for the closing session at 4:15. And so I'll let you go now and I'll see you all again in a few minutes.